we'll send through a copy of the recording as well. Okay, so we are going to jump in. So good morning or good afternoon if you're in New Zealand. My name's Elise and I'm the partner manager here at EzzyBills. I am based in Melbourne. And if you haven't seen me give a webinar yet, I have been working with EzzyBills for about a year, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to have a bit of a chat with you guys today and talk a little bit more about the mobile app. Like in all of our webinars, feel free to pop your questions in the chat as we go, and I'll do my best to get to them throughout the webinar. And if we don't get to them throughout the webinar, there'll definitely be some time for some Q&A at the end. So it is a bit of a smaller group today, so hopefully we'll try to make it as engaging as possible. The format's going to be a little bit different today. Normally I sort of talk about a case study and then do a little bit of a demo and go through the next case study. But because I have my assistant, my phone with me today, the screen sharing gets a little bit more complicated. So we're going to start with sort of the first section of the webinar, probably the first third or quarter, just talking through about the mobile app, what it does, some of the features of functionality, and then in the second part of the webinar, we'll delve a little bit deeper into the demo. I'll obviously show you some of the functionality with the app, how it interacts with EzzyBills, with our sort of web application, and if we have time as well, how some things sort of pop through to zero. So hope you enjoy, and we'll get started. So as I mentioned in the emails that we sent out, these are the different things we're going to talk about. So we'll just do a really quick overview and then delve a little bit deeper into some of that functionality. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just connecting you and your team and the clients to the app. That's probably really basic, and a lot of you, especially if you've been using the product for a little while, have probably figured that out, but I just thought it was important to mention just in case anybody is new to the software or hasn't quite figured out that piece yet. The second thing we're going to focus on is processing different types of documents with the mobile app, and talking about some different types of workflows that you can process through the mobile app. And some of that is actually relatively new functionality that we released probably in around September or October, so towards the end of last year. So a lot of that might be new to some of you. So definitely excited to share that and go into a little bit more detail about that aspect of things. And then we'll talk about some other features and functionality settings that can be turned on and off, like review receipts, multi-page, edge detection, and adding notes, and just go through what all those different settings are and what they mean and what they do and the best times to use them in order to really maximize the value that you're receiving from the mobile app. And then, of course, questions, like I mentioned before, we can go through them as we go. And if we don't get to them, there will definitely be some dedicated time for questions at the end. Okay, so like I mentioned, I'm going to start just by sort of going through some of the steps in part one, and then we'll jump into actually seeing all of this in action in a few minutes. So connecting to the app. So our EzzyBills app is available for free through the App Store or through Google Play. You go to the App Store or to Google, search for EzzyBills and download it. The icon is our logo, so it should be pretty easy for you to spot and find. And then once you've downloaded the EzzyBills mobile app, there's basically two ways that you can connect the app to your current EzzyBills account. So one is through a QR code, and one is just through your username and password. So if you're the bookkeeper or the accountant, or you're the business owner or staff member who's managing the EzzyBills account, you can just log in using the username and password that you've used to set up your regular EzzyBills account. If you are a client or somebody who doesn't have access, I'll talk to you in just a second about how to then connect the mobile app with the QR code. And the benefit of doing that is really that you don't need to have access to the EzzyBills dashboard or the username or password. You can just use the QR code to connect to the app, to the EzzyBills dashboard. And there's a sort of set of instructions that you can send to yourself or send across to all of your clients that'll really help you do that. And again, like I said, there can be as many clients or staff members or users using the mobile app for each company, and you as the bookkeeper or accountant or business owner can have as many different accounts on the mobile app as you like. And I'll show you again in a few minutes what that looks like and how to do that. And you can always toggle back and forth between different clients to make it really easy for you to make sure you're uploading the right documents to the right client file. Okay, so in terms of some of the main features and functionality, so the first one is review receipts, and this is one that I generally recommend people keep on, especially if you've got clients or staff kind of out in the field that are sending through receipts and they're not the ones actually managing it on the back end. Basically, what the review receipts feature does is it allows the person, once they've taken a photo of the document, to just have a picture of what the app has picked up on their phone. And that basically lets them just, edit it if necessary, just to make sure that all the information that's been picked up is correct before they send it through. And that's really good for things like employee expense claims and spend money transactions where people just have, little receipts from restaurants or petrol stations or that kind of stuff. Especially in cases where they need to be reimbursed or things need to be reconciled against a company credit card. It's really a good idea to make sure that the people using the app have that functionality on, just so they can check it before that goes through to the system. The multi-page function allows you to scan through multiple pages at once. And so this can sort of be two different types of things. It can be multiple different receipts. So let's say you've got 5 petrol receipts that are all different receipts from different petrol stations, and you just want to scan them all through. Or it could be one big document. So you could have a 10-page Telstra invoice, let's say. You could use that multi-page for either of those. And then we do have a setting called auto separate in the software that you need to put on if you've got different documents. So the multi-page on, and then auto separate on the dashboard, on or off, depending on whether or not you are scanning one big document or lots of smaller documents. Edge detection is basically a feature that the app will sort of create an edge, for lack of a better term, around the receipt that you're scanning, just to make sure it's got, the correct document. And again, this is usually something that I recommend to people. It just helps the app sort of focus in on what you want it to take a photo of and ignore whatever else is going on in the background of the picture. And adding notes is also a really great way if the person scanning through the invoice wants to write a note that, they want to say that this petrol is related to their driving trip to Sydney, or the restaurant bill is when they took a certain client out for lunch. They can make those notes, and not only will those notes come through to you when the document comes through, but it'll also go through to your accounting software. And so if you need to go back and figure out, what that receipt was for 6 months, a year, 2 years down the track, if the client or employee writes a little note, you'll be able to have that information. Okay, and processing different types of documents. So like I said at the beginning, this is probably the section that is the newest in terms of the features and functionality that we've added. And again, when I'm going through this, some of this will be a little bit of jumping back and forth between the mobile app and the dashboard in terms of the different types of documents that we process. So I'm sure by now you know, but EzzyBills assumes that every document that comes through is a supplier invoice unless we tell it otherwise. But we do have a whole heap of different types of documents that we can process. We just need to tell EzzyBills what those types of documents are. So we process things like sale invoices, RCTI invoices, purchase orders. We can do purchase order matching, credit notes, etc., etc. And we can also do employee expense claims and spend money transactions. So for the first kind of series of documents, like sale invoices, RCTI invoices, credit notes, etc., in each EzzyBills account, there is a list of all of the email addresses and how you would send them. So if you were using the EzzyBills email address, so my test account is called Your Company. So if I was sending a sale invoice, I would just send it to yourcompany.sale@ezzybills1.com. And if I wanted to send through a sale invoice in the mobile app, all I need to do is under the alias section in the app, write sale. So that would be the same with any of those types of documents. Under the alias, you could write RCTI or credit note, and then EzzyBills would understand what type of document you're trying to process and process it accordingly. With spend money transactions and employee expense claims, those need to be set up through the list of users approvers, and I will briefly mention how to do that, but I did run another webinar a little while ago specifically on those topics, and happy to share it if anybody wants to know a little bit more about how to do that specifically. But in order to process them through the app, it's the same thing. You'll set up a name that'll be connected to the employee expense claim or the spend money transaction, and you'll use that in the alias. Same thing with approvals. You can set those up in the list of users approvers, and you just put the name in the alias section in the app. And in terms of the more complicated workflows, in our workflow tab, you can set up a whole host of different types of workflows, and you can also use the alias from those workflows and put it in the alias section in the mobile app. Now, sorry if this seems a little bit complicated or confusing. You'll see when I actually do the demo in a minute, it's really pretty straightforward. And really, over the past couple of months, since we've added some of this new functionality, you can pretty much use the app in the same ways that you use the email addresses and the other functionality. So it makes it into a really valuable tool and a really, I think, important part of using EzzyBills for any business. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any so far. Otherwise, I think we will swap over to the app. Okay. So we have swapped from my computer screen to my app. So this is all live, taking place on our mobile app. So obviously this app has already been downloaded. I've got an Android. Process is pretty similar between an Android and an iPhone. And it's already been connected to my main demo account, which is called Your Company, and you can see that because you've got that at the top, and that becomes really important. You'll see in a second when you've got multiple client accounts set up on the app that you always want to make sure, obviously, that you're scanning the right documents to the right client accounts. So what we are going to do, actually, I'm going to swap back for a second. And we're just going to swap back to the website just to show you how to set up a couple of things. Okay, so now we're back on the EzzyBills website, and I just want to mention a couple of things to connect to the app. So we're in the settings section, your settings and account settings section. And you'll see about halfway down the page, there's a section that says mobile passcode, and then email me the EzzyBills mobile how-to. And so, like I mentioned, if you wanted to connect through your username and password, you can do that very easily with your username and password. If you want to connect with the QR code, you have got this QR code here. And if you want to send the opportunity to connect to EzzyBills to your staff, contractors, clients, you want to click on this link, email me the EzzyBills mobile how-to, and it'll automatically send you an email to whatever email you've used to register for EzzyBills to go through how to set up the mobile app. So I've just sent it to my email address. And here you can see it sends a PDF. And it goes through the instructions of how to download it, some basic information on how to use it, and you've got that copy of the QR code, so you can share that with people so they can log in, and again, they don't need to know the username and password of your EzzyBills email. Now, if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant, or you've got a multi-company account such as this, you can do this for as many accounts as you like. But like I said, you've obviously just got to make sure that you keep all of the accounts in order and you're sending to the right one. So we'll just connect one that is not currently connected. Just to show you that process. So we'll send that through. And I will sign back into my app. And I will show you in a second that that has been connected. Okay, so we are back in the app. And like you can see here, I just connected this Lori's Lawyers account. And like you can see, you can have as many client accounts as you like connected to the app. Every time you want to add a new account, you just click on Add Account. You've got that option to either log in or log in with QR code. And if you click that login with QR code, you'll just get a QR code scanner that'll come up. You can scan it over that QR code that comes up in the PDF, and you will be connected. So the next couple of things I wanted to talk about is in the settings menu. So you'll see at the top of the app, there's a little gear icon. And if you click on that gear icon, you're in the screen that I just showed you a few seconds ago that has a few different bits and pieces. So at the bottom, you've got all of the accounts that you're currently connected to, and you can always just toggle back and forth between them. You can remove them if they're no longer relevant or they're not your clients anymore. And you can add accounts like I just mentioned. Now, these are some of the settings that I spoke about a little earlier. So we've got this setting called review receipts. And I'll show you what that looks like when you put it on. So we've got that review receipts turned on. And we're going to scan an invoice. And basically what happens is, first of all, the invoice is generally scanned through a little bit quicker when we've got that review receipts function turned on. And here you can see you've got the supplier, you've got the invoice number, you've got the total, and you've got the tax. So this was a community soup kitchen that a meal was purchased from. You've got the total, you've got the tax. If there are any things that need to be changed, things can be added. So there was no invoice number on this, but let's say you wanted to add an invoice number to it, you could. You could edit the supplier, you could edit the total or the tax if it wasn't picked up correctly, but in this case it was picked up correctly. You can just hit submit and then it will go through. So that's something that I generally recommend using. The multi-page, I'm not going to show you now, but we spoke about it a few minutes ago, and that just lets you take photos of multiple receipts. And so normally what will happen is after you take a photo of one receipt, it'll process, take a photo of another receipt, it'll process. But when you've got that multi-page on, you can take photos of multiple receipts at once and they won't sort of process in the middle. It does mean that you can't have the review receipts on at the same time, and you'll get a notification about that. But it is helpful if the client has sent through a lot of documents and you just want to push them through quickly, and you can always review them once they've gotten into the drafts folder in Xero or into the accounting software. And edge detection, like I mentioned, really just helps pick up sort of the box around the receipt. And so you can see when you put on the edge detection like I have, and you go to scan a document, you should see, let's just make sure that's still on. Sorry about that. There you go. You should see that red box appear around the document, which is basically the software's way of showing that it has picked up that document in whatever else is going on my desk, which you can see is a lot of other documents. There we go. So it's picked that up as well, and then you can just push that through, and it'll give you that edge detection. And it should process through in a very similar way that the other one just did. And we'll just push that through as well. Okay, so now we are going to move on to sort of a little bit of the more complicated kind of stuff, which is talking a little bit more about the aliases. So we've kind of been working from the bottom up. We started with the multiple accounts, moved through some of the settings, and now we're going to speak about the aliases. So like you can see here, under the username, that's the username that you're currently connected to, which should always match the username that is highlighted in green. And then under the alias name, there's a whole heap of different things that you can do. So we're just going to swap back to the computer screen, and I will show you some of the things we can do. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple of things I'm going to mention. So the first thing I'm going to mention is the different types of documents that we can process, which I've mentioned before, so I'm not going to go through the whole list again, but you should be able to see it now on my screen. And so if you're processing documents through EzzyBills through an email address and you want to process any of these types of documents, you can just attach the document, send an email, and it'll process. If you want to do it through the mobile app, you just want to use the end part of the alias and put it in that alias section in the mobile app. So for example, if you want to process something as a sale invoice, you just write sale in the mobile app. Or if you want to process something as a credit note, you just write credit note. So you don't need to put in the full email address. You just need to write the section that's after the dot. Now, we've also just released functionality where we can do something similar with our workflows. So again, this isn't necessarily a webinar about our workflows. And again, we also have given webinars about our workflows in the past and happy to share those and obviously happy to talk more about our workflows offline. But basically there's all sorts of different types of things that we can add to our workflow. So things like approvals and price checking and NDIS export and all sorts of different things. But what I'm going to do is just pop over to a simple, oh, I'm in the wrong account, sorry. Just going to pop over to a simple 2-level approval workflow. And again, we can set up any type of workflows. We can have up to 5 levels of approvers. We can use these for spend money transactions. We can do all sorts of different things. Audit checking, where we check the BSB and account number of the invoice. Price checking, like I mentioned, where we can you can upload your supplier prices at the beginning of the year, and then when the invoices come through, you can match against them. NDIS extract. So if you're working with NDIS clients, we can extract NDIS information about the specific codes of services that were provided. So there's all sorts of different things that we can add to the workflows. And again, we'll leave the details of that for another day. But for argument's sake, this is a 2-level approval workflow. Let's say you wanted to have a 2-level approval workflow on your mobile app. You would set it up through here, and then you could basically use this last section of the workflow name to put in that alias field that we spoke about a few minutes ago. So if you were using the email address and sending a document to be processed through this workflow through an email address, then you would type in this whole thing. So it'd be your company.workflow.0bills approved level 2 at EzzyBills1.com. And if you're using the mobile app, in the alias field, all you have to write is 0bills approval level 2 at EzzyBills1.com. So those go in the alias field, and those can process just in the same way and through all of the same steps as they would when sending an email. Now, the other thing that you can put in the alias field is spend money transactions and employee expense claims. So in order to do those, we've got to go to our list of users approvers. And again, we've also done other webinars on this, so I'm just going to kind of skim over it at like a high level. And I'm always happy to talk more about this kind of stuff offline if required. So in order to set up an employee expense claim, again, we're in settings and approval and expenses. What you want to do is you want to put the name of the employee who's spent the money. So in this case, it's Joe. You type in the approver email address, which would be the person who needs to approve the employee expense claim if relevant. You tick my expenses. You tick bypass approval if you don't want the document going through to approval, and then you hit save changes. And what happens when you hit save changes, you get a unique upload email address. So again, if you're using an email and sending through documents via email, you would send them to yourcompany.joe@EzzyBills1.com, and they would set Joe up as a supplier. And at the end of the fortnight or the month or whenever you pay your bills, you would be able to pay Joe when you're paying the other suppliers. If you're using the mobile app, all you have to do is put the name Joe into the alias field, and then it will process in the same way. Spend money transactions are very similar. So when you're setting it up, again, you would just click on the Add Approver button, which will set up a new line in this chart. You put in either the person's name or the department that's spending the money. So let's say, for argument's sake, it was me. I had the company credit card and I was spending the money on that card. You put in the email address again of the approver. And then for business bank account, this is really important. You put the last 4 digits of the business bank account that you want the transaction to match against in your accounting software. So I've got a Demo 0 account. The last 4 digits of that Demo 0 account are 5678. And so that's what I've put in. I'll click bypass approval. And then again, save changes, and it creates this unique upload email address. Again, if you're using the email functionality through EzzyBills, you can send that petrol receipt or whatever it is to yourcompany.elise@EzzyBills1.com. If you're using the mobile app, all you need to do is put in the name in this chart of users approvers, and then the document will be processed as a spend money transaction, and it will go into Xero or your accounting software as a spend money transaction, ready to be reconciled against your bank account, as opposed to coming through as a supplier invoice, which, as I've mentioned before, is the default setting. Okay, so I think what we'll do now is we will pop back to the app, and I will just show you 1 or 2 of those to run through, and we'll open it up for any questions. Okay, so we are back in the app, and back to this page with alias. So like I said, these are the places where you would type in the name of whatever workflow you would like to use. So let's say, for argument's sake, we want to use the Elise workflow, which was a spend money transaction. So I spent some money on the business credit card and want that to be reflected in the receipts that I'm submitting through to my employer. So we put in my name, and then we just go back to the scan now. Now, when we're scanning the receipts, there's just one more thing that I wanted to mention, which is this little blue box in the top right hand corner, which is the note section, which I did mention before. So we could just write whatever you want. We can say for client lunch, let's say, or whatever you want to write. And like I said, whatever notes are put in at this stage, we'll go through to your accounting software along with the document. So we've got that information there. We can see if we click on the note section again, that's been saved. And then we take a photo of the document. And that will go through to Xero as a spend money transaction instead of an employee expense claim. And so we'll put that through. And like you can tell, so now we know that that's gone through under the Elise alias, because next to my company, we've got Elise in brackets. And that would be the case for anything you put in the alias. So let's say you wanted to process a sale invoice and you put sale there. Again, you would see the yourcompany.sale. So before you scan the document, it's always a good idea just to check the top blue bar at the top of the app and just make sure that it's the right company and also the right document type. So often what will happen is you'll have, employees or contractors, and all of the documents that they process are either employee expense claims or spend money transactions. So when you're helping them set it up, it probably just makes sense to help them set it up with that as their default. Obviously, if you're the accountant or bookkeeper or business owner, you might be swapping back and forth between different people's employee expense claims and different people's spend money transactions. And so then you've got to be a little bit more careful about which one you're logged into and which type of document you're processing at any time. So I think I'm going to leave it there. And happy to open it up for any questions. The edge protection does not seem to work very well. If you have it turned off, will the receipt still be able to be extracted? Yes, it will be. And I don't know why it was being a little bit finicky now, but generally what I recommend is just putting the receipt on a solid table or carpet, and there really shouldn't be a problem with it. When the edge detection sometimes is a little bit more helpful is if you've really got to take a photo of something on the go and the background's really sort of a bit more messy. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, just as much as possible, just putting them on a flat surface and taking the photo, and you should be okay. Okay, other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or pop them in the Q&A, whatever is easier for you. Anything else that you would like to know about the app or the product, anything that I've missed? Our company has a field team of 8, and each has their own company credit card. Do they need a separate alias for company card transactions and personal card expense claims? Yeah, so basically what you would need to do in that case is set up basically separate lines in that chart for each employee, match it with the credit card number, and then also an individual one for each employee who's submitting expense claims. So it is a little bit of work to set up, but once it's set up and it's good to go, and there's no limit to the number of, I guess, lines you can have in that chart. So I think you can put about 10 on the first page, and then it'll just kind of move over to a second page, and you can have as many of those as you want. Thank you. Does the alias need to be different? Craig for company account and Craig X for personal. Yes. Yes, exactly. So the aliases can't be the same, because otherwise the system doesn't know which one you want to process it against. So it's a really good point. Thanks for mentioning it. So I just set up one client, with a similar kind of setup, and yeah, what they did was they just used the name for expense claims and then just CC for credit cards. So it would have been, just Craig and then Craig CC. or Craig Personal and Craig Credit Card. You can obviously set that up whatever way works, but yes, they do need to be different. Can you please show an example of how recipient created tax invoice works? I don't have any examples of that on me, but if you send me an email, elise@ezzydoc.com, happy to take you through it and set up a time to either show you how to do it or run you through it. But yeah, I don't have one of those handy. I assume we can just add users and we don't need to worry about the approval workflow. So I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's that you can add users for employee expense claims and spend money transactions, and you don't need to take them through approval, which is correct. So there was that, I'll just go back to the chart since a lot of people seem to be asking questions about that, just to have it in front of you. So for these spend money transactions and employee expense claims, there is this bypass approval tick box. And so you can just tick that bypass approval and things don't need to be approved. So, if it's you as the business owner, bookkeeper, or whatever that's got the credit card transactions or the employee expense claims, they don't need to be approved. You just tick that bypass approval and then it'll just go straight through to your accounting software. If the documents do need to be approved, then you would untick that bypass approval tick box, and the approvers will get an email with an image of the receipt saying, Joe has submitted this. Do you approve it? Yes or no? And only once you've approved it, then will it go through to the accounting software. Just spend money. Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I've got here. So yeah, with the spend money, you'd set it up exactly how I've set it up here. You'd put the person's name, last 4 digits of the credit card, bypass approval, save changes. You create your upload email address, and if you have it set up like that, then things will just go straight through, and you don't need to worry about the approvals. Okay, some good questions coming through. Any other ones? Anything else about the mobile app, the settings in the mobile app, best practices of the mobile app, ways you're thinking about using it and just want to kind of run by me? None. Okay, so if there are no other questions, then I think we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Just wanted to put in a bit of a plug for the Zero Roadshow. If you haven't heard, it's been rescheduled for the end of April, beginning of May. And we're going to be exhibiting in Melbourne, Geelong, Sydney, and Brisbane, I believe. So if you're in any of those cities and coming to the Roadshow, definitely come by and say hello to us. And we'd be happy to have a chat. And I just got a last minute question come in, which is great. If you find a receipt but you're not sure if you have sent it in, can you look at the history in the app? So there's no history in the app, but we do have, I'll just share my screen again quickly. In account settings, we do have a setting here called check for duplicates. And so if you turn that on, basically it'll go into your accounting software and check to see if that invoice has already been submitted, and it'll come back as rejected if it's already gone through. So unfortunately, there's no history in the app directly, but I generally recommend that check for duplicate setting in most cases, and that should make sure you're not sending through the same invoice twice. Okay, so Zero Roadshow. It would be awesome to meet some of you in person. And if you've got any colleagues or friends that are going to be attending, definitely feel free to tell them about us. It would be great to meet them as well. And as always, feel free to get in touch with us. You can reach me at Elise at EzzyDoc.com. You can reach out to our support team at support@EzzyDoc.com, especially if you're interested in setting up any of those workflows or need help with the setting up the employee expense claims or spend money transactions. Our team is always here and available to help. So thanks everyone for joining, and have a great day.